माया सुतवर गौतमम् शुद्धोधन प्रिय सिद्धार्थम् माया सुतवर गौतमम् शुद्धोधन प्रिय सिद्धार्थम् कपिलवस्तु पूतकरम् गोपा वल्लभ श्रीबुद्धम् वेद विदाम्बर प्रेममयम् सत्यगुणाकर अमिताभम् दीनदयामय देवदेव करुणासागर कल्याणम् जन्म जरा व्याधि निर्जितम् कान्तासुतगृहवर्जितम् तीव्रतापक्लेश स्वीकृतम् नित्यबोधिसुधा प्रापितम् जयतु जयतु देव अमिताभम् जयतु जयतु देव अमिताभम् जयतु जयतु देव अमिताभम् जयतु जयतु देव अमिताभम् शाक्यतिलककुलशोभितम् हिंसाव्रतबीजदूरीभृतम् प्रेम मिलन प्रीति स्थापितम् सर्वभूते विभुव्यापितम् निर्वाण तत्व सुबोधकरम् तापदहन सुख विधायकम् प्रेम धरणितल सिंचितम् मैत्री करुणारस मंडितम् जयतु मार्गयुगदर्शितम् ज्ञान निधान शुभ गोतीतम् शुद्ध बुद्ध पुत तथागतम् मंगलकर जय नंदितम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् यज्ञ विधि कृति निंदितम् देवयजन पशुदर्शितम् विहग वेदन भयमोचितम् दयाघन योगी वर पूजितम् पूर्णमासि शुभ पुण्य दिनम् वैशाखी तिथि गत निर्वाणम् महापरिनिर्वाण लग्न करम जय 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 देव श्री बुद्धम दीन शरण विभो नमाम्यहम् तापशमन प्रभो भजाम्यहम् प्रेम ललित नाथ जानाम्यहम् शांति निलय रूप वदाम्यहम् जयतु जयतु देव अमिताभम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव श्री बुद्धम् जयतु जयतु देव श्री बुद्धम्.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to those of you joining us in person and those joining us on Zoom to our Buddha's birthday celebration. We've got a very special guest speaker this morning. The Venerable THUBTEN CHOKYI she'll be joining us via Zoom from Perth. She's a very dear friend of ours for many years now. I think we first came to know her through the Women's Interfaith Network, which our nuns have been very closely involved with. Venerable Ven.Thubten Chokyi is resident teacher at Hayagriva Buddhist Center and Tara Meditation Center in Western Australia. She is spiritual advisor to the Sakyadhita Australian Buddhist Women's Organization and vice chair of the Australian Sangha Association. Chökyi is also director of Liberation Prison Project, providing support for men and women in prisons worldwide, wanting to transform their minds through spiritual practice. So we'll be very happy to hear from Venerable Chökyi this morning. And her talk will be followed by a talk by Gayatriprana. And then Venerable Chökyi has kindly agreed to stay on and to conduct a guided meditation to end the event. So I'll be inviting her now to give her talk, and just give me a moment, Chökyi, I'll get you set up. Okay. That's good. We can see you, Venerable Chökyi. Please you can unmute yourself.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to start with paying respects to the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather, and to acknowledge the leaders past, present and emerging. And I'll start with following that beautiful chanting from my tradition of the mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. Hayagriva mune mune ma mune soha. Hayagriva mune mune Maha Mune Suha Taya Tao Mune Mune Maha Mune Suha. So here we are celebrating not only the Buddha's birthday, but this month from the full moon last Monday till the next full moon in June 14, we celebrate the birth, the enlightenment and passing into parinirvana of the Buddha. So the aspect of leaving the body. So Lama Tsongkhapa, who's one of our great scholars in the Tibetan tradition in the 14th century, praised the Buddha, saying, body born of 10 million virtues and excellence, speech that fulfills the hopes of all living beings, mind that sees all knowables as they are. I pay homage to head of the Shakya tribe. So the 10 million virtues and excellences is actually a reflection of what we ourselves can attain, that the representation of the Buddha is not as we would have seen Gautama Siddhartha walking around in India and current day Nepal. He didn't look like that, but it's, we say, an emanation body, a body of a being that has fully purified or cleansed or detoxified all the disturbing states of mind or the toxic emotions, negative thoughts and so forth, completely eliminated all of those and perfected all there is to be perfected in terms of our positive qualities, which are innate to us. So we can see it as a reflection of ourselves, our own potential. And this is why the Buddha came into the world, to show that. And so reflecting our own potential, in fact, the very first image of a Buddha was done from a reflection in a lake, because the light radiating out from his body was so intense that they, couldn't draw the holy body. And it's said that when the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree in what we know now as Bodh Gaya, in the first quarter of the night, he saw all his own past lives. And then in the second quarter, saw all the past lives of every other living being. In other words, knew where we're all coming from, what our tendencies, what our karma, everything about us. And really only a Buddha really knows karma, the subtleties of karma. And because of that, it makes the Buddha like the first psychologist, the ultimate psychologist, knowing the mind and how our minds function and how we can work with our mind. We say, that the negative states of mind is like pollution in the water, that it can be eliminated, it can be filtered out through all our practices, for all our 10 million virtues. And so practicing a spiritual life, practicing a virtuous life is the way that we get contentment, we get happiness, we get a sense of our own power, our own capabilities. And so then the Buddha awoke at dawn fully enlightened. And the first person the Buddha encountered who saw this radiant light going out in all directions said, "What are you? Are you some extraterrestrial being?" No. Are you a god? No. Are you a man? No. What are you then? Awake, fully awake. So Buddha, Bodhi, is exactly what that means. Fully awake, like having relieved all the veils of all our confused states of mind, or, our projections onto others of what's really a product of our own mind, having completely eliminated all of that. And that radiance, we say, is like the sun coming up in the morning, that eliminates the darkness of our confusion, our ignorance, our anger, all those things that cloud our minds. And the darkness doesn't go somewhere else. It's gone completely. So that, we say, is the Buddha, that completely, the sun that illuminates the world. So being fully awake. And the Buddha said, each and every one of us, because we have that innate potential within ourselves, can achieve exactly the same thing. That's the good news, and that because we're changing moment by moment, we can actually choose what direction we want to change in. And if we choose one that's more in sync with reality, that's all aligned with the positive qualities, then we're going to reap the beneficial results of that. In fact, it's said that having been born human is a result of having practiced good ethical discipline in past lives, being very virtuous in past lives, having made stainless prayers, to continue on our spiritual path. Practice of generosity, ethics, and so forth. So when we see that image of the Buddha, you've got a beautiful image there. In our tradition, we show that the Buddha is sitting on a square throne, a golden square throne, bedecked with the most gorgeous jewels. And all those jewels represent all the realizations of the Buddha. Realization about the process of dying and being reborn and being able to have control over that, and where you get reborn and where it's going to benefit others most, and so forth. But being able to guide others through that process, the process, realization of impermanence, realization of infinite compassion and wisdom, and combining those together, which is the mind of a Buddha, and combining that with infinite power. So on this throne, at the corners, there are pairs of snow lions, at the front and back and the sides. And these snow, of course, in the Tibetan tradition, it's snow lions. In other traditions, it can be other types of lions. Represents fearlessness, gone beyond fear, completely no fear, which makes you incredibly courageous, like ultimately courageous. No fear whatsoever. So it's pretty amazing if we contemplate the qualities of what we want to develop in our own minds. And then sitting on top of the lotus, as we say, the lotus comes out of the mud or out of all the yuckiness of our existence. But what blooms is a beautiful flower, and the mud doesn't stick. And that represents the mind of wanting to not just get caught up in the affairs of this life and so forth, but to work towards developing ourselves spiritually as much as we can, using our precious human life to develop our infinite potential as much as is possible in this life. And so that your intention is more towards future lives and more towards others, rather than what can I get out of life, is what can I give? How can I help? How can I be of benefit? As Charles Darwin said, we can't, we're hardwired for compassion. We can't help but help. So this beautiful lotus represents that. And then the sun seated, sun cushion, like golden cushion on top of the lotus, represents that wisdom mind that is totally in sync with reality, doesn't elaborate on top of what is there, what isn't there, just sees things exactly as they are, so knows exactly how to guide each and every one of us, knows exactly where we're up to in our spiritual progression, and how to speak according to where we're at and in our language and so forth. And that is an incredible skill of a teacher, isn't it? Being able to just be exactly where the student's at. And then on top of that, the moon cushion, beautiful, like the full moon, like 1,000 full moons, really very cool. We associate coolness with the moon, which we say is the coolness of the mind of bodhicitta, the awakening mind of infinite altruistic compassion. And so the Buddha has in his regard, each and every one of us, each and every being, regardless whether they helped the Buddha, harmed the Buddha, or did neither, out of compassion for the world, just wanting to show this is how you can be free of all the disturbing states of mind, all our anger, our confusion, our jealousy, our pride, and so forth and so forth. And there's a great long list of that. So we say 84,000 of them. And they're antidotes to each one. And so the Buddha knows how to directly guide each and every one, and wants to, because not bearing to see the suffering in the world, not bearing to see the suffering of beings, and seeing how we are suffering, even when we think we're happy, it still turns into an element of suffering, it doesn't last. It's not permanent. And then the Buddha seated on top of those three on the lotus, the sun and the moon, in glorious array, glorious golden light going out in all directions. And we see, even though we might have a painted image or a statue, we see it as wherever the image is, there a Buddha is. I'm quite fascinated by the power of the object of a representation of the Buddha. It seems people want it in their gardens, they want it on their walls, they want it everywhere. So you don't have to be Buddhist to think, oh, I'm really attracted to that. So that idea that no matter how much you gaze on that image, you're never displeased, you're never dissatisfied. And then, of course, the Buddha's full lips, which give the teachings, full red lips, and full of compassion, always smiling at us. I always think, are we always smiling back? So the Buddha's always smiling, always delighting, particularly those of us, seeking for more meaning in this life, seeking to lead a virtuous life, seeking to, draw the essence of this life. The Buddha's totally blissed out. And if we tap into that, we can experience that bliss ourselves. And this is what the Buddha taught. So the Buddha, while in meditation, is also at the same time working for others. So you see the eyes, like in yoga, you see the eyes half closed in meditative concentration on reality, single point of concentration, being able to stay fixed on that concentration without being distracted at all, ever, by anything. Just a really very focused, laser-like concentration, peaceful mind, calm mind. That in itself is incredibly powerful. And on top of that, while the Buddha's doing that, engages in enlightened activities, goes to all different realms of existence, all different universes, wherever help is needed, as many bodies as needed, whatever's needed. And you think, how can that happen? But this is what the Buddha showed is our potential, that we can achieve ourselves. And then the Buddha's, eyes gazing on us equally with compassion. So each and every being that exists, not just the human beings, but all the animals, all the insects, all the ones in the ocean, the skies, everywhere, and other realms that we can't see, the Buddha holds in his loving, compassionate concern always, this omniscient mind that is everywhere and everything to all beings, omnipresent, omniscient mind. And again, holding in mind, the Buddha said, we can each attain that ourselves. It's quite remarkable. Maybe it feels like impossible, but slowly, slowly, those of us engaging in a spiritual path can see, well, I'm a bit better than I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever. I'm making progress on this path. So the Buddha knows all our past lives. He knows our capacity, what level we're up to. And I say he, but it can be she. There are many female Buddhas as well. So not just one Buddha, but we see the representation of Shakyamuni Buddha, and that all those different aspects, male, female form, for compassion, for swift energy, for wisdom and so forth, are for us to be able to say, oh, yeah, I really want to develop that one. Fearlessness, I really want to develop that one. So I want to, focus on that image and tap into our own innate positive potential, because everything that is positive within us is in sync with reality. Our anger, our desires and craving and jealousy and pride is totally not in sync with reality, which is why it causes us problems, And the Buddha's, hair, each single, like blue, black in color, we say, each hair perfectly coiled to the right represents that ultimate ethical discipline of physical action, not expending any unnecessary energy and keeping very, sort of keeping the energy centered and focused, and only engaging in beneficial activity for others. And the ethics of speech, we talk about the 60 eloquent qualities of the Buddha's speech, being very gentle, not engaging in exclamations and drama and so forth. Just very, very clear and simple, so that we can understand. And then the omniscient mind, we have this Ujnisha, this crown protrusion. Actually, I remember going to the goddesses, Hindu and Buddhist goddesses exhibition at the art gallery many years ago. And I loved the Hindu representation of this enlightened mind, and just went up and up and up and up and up. The potential is like the sky, limitless space. So we can hold that reflection as a reflection of ourselves and say, this is me, this is who I truly am. And, we can join together and think how marvelous that the Buddha showed this way in the world, showed us and continues to show us, through all the spiritual paths, through all the spiritual leaders and so forth, all the great yogis and so forth, all guiding us to be who we truly are. So we can celebrate that today. Mune Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Venerable Chökyi. Just between you and me, I'm relieved I'm getting all this technology to work properly. And we now will be hearing a talk from Gayatriprana ji. And then once again, thank you. So it'll be, whoops, she dropped down.
Thank you, dear sister, for the wonderful, enlightening talk. Thank you. Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. A few years ago, I read in a book that the author compares Hinduism to the attic of a century-old mansion. We throw all the old things, unwanted things into the attic. They remain there, get collected with dust and cobwebs. Things accumulate. Then maybe the next generation of owners come, somebody goes and cleans it up. And then that person, in his or her turn, put more things there. Thinking that, oh, maybe I may need to use it later. And it goes on accumulating again, dust and cobweb. It continues. And another person comes and cleans it up, again adds more things, it goes on. Hinduism is like that. I found it's a very, very apt simile. Over thousands of years, Hinduism has accumulated many, many ideals and practices which are no longer relevant, meaningless, people following distorted or wrong means of attaining the final goal of freedom, of liberation. Then we get some great teacher comes and remove all this accumulated accretions. It is the habit of priests everywhere in all cultures to lay down many rules and practices and insisting that only through them the ordinary people can approach God. So everywhere the priests try to control him, other people. Same within in India also. But in India at the same time there existed another group called the sannyasis, the monks who had gone beyond the rituals and ceremonies, like prophets in the Jewish tradition. These monks tried to control the dominance or curb the dominance of the priests and succeeded to a certain extent. Now it is just like, you have to remember the simile, the new person comes and cleans up the attic and then in his or her turn adds more things. The same way, the teacher, the great monk comes and cleans up the unwanted traditions, age-old traditions whose use by date is over. But then maybe in 2 generations, their disciples, they themselves become priests. And again, they collect all the privileges and becomes priests themselves. Then again, it's time for another great teacher to come. It goes on and on. Is a great teacher coming, reforming the social and religious atmosphere. And then within a few generations, again, it's back to the original state. It continues. We may wonder why it is going on, whereas in other cultures, we hear about one teacher, one great teacher coming. But why do we say in India we have got so many teachers coming again and again? There's a difference. In other cultures, we see the civilization rising once and then dying out. Whereas in India, we see the civilization dying out and then again reviving, again and again, not just once, again and again. So we have got a long line of reformers, great teachers, like Buddha, Mahavira, who started or from the followers became the Jains, then Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Sri Chaitanya, Guru Nanak, Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, got a long line of great teachers. All of them trying to bring about religious and social reformation needed at that particular time. So Buddha is a great, we can say one of the first great reformer that Hinduism had seen. Religion at the time of Buddha was mainly metaphysical discussions and elaborate rituals. Caste system put a heavy burden on ordinary people. The priests prevented the people from getting any knowledge. They had so much control that they even put the idea that if the Vedas are, if a low caste person even hears the Vedas being chanted, that's a punishable crime. He'll be punished. So much restriction they had put. To be a true reformer, one must have great love and sympathy for the suffering masses. Swami Vivekananda, in his lecture in Madras when he came back from the West in 1897, he gave a few lectures. One of them was, and the topic was My Plan of Campaign. And in that, he addresses the young men of Madras. He says, feel therefore my would-be reformers, my would-be patriots, because they were all trying to reform the Hinduism. So that's why Swamiji calls them my would-be reformers. Do you feel that millions and millions of the descendants of gods and of sages have become next door neighbors to brutes? Does it make you restless? Does it make you sleepless? That is Swamiji's question. This is, according to Swami Vivekananda, this is one of the important qualifications to be a reformer, to feel for the suffering of others. Buddha was one such great reformer. He literally felt restless, he literally felt sleepless at the suffering of the humanity. It was this suffering that made him give up the life in the palace, life of enjoyment. It was to find a means to alleviate the suffering of others that he renounced and took to monastic life. According to Swami Vivekananda, Buddha had the brain and the heart. Many people have the heart, they feel, but they don't know how to find the means to alleviate the suffering. Whereas Buddha had the brains and the heart. He had the brain to find out, discover the cause of the misery and the means to get out of the misery. And his heart was infinite like the sky. He didn't seek enlightenment or freedom just for himself. He sought it only to alleviate the sufferings of others. More than 2000 years later, we see similar pathos in the words of Swami Vivekananda, another great reformer, when he says, may I be born again and again and suffer thousands of miseries, so that I may worship the only God that exists, the only God I believe in, the sum total of all souls, and above all, my God the wicked, my God the miserable, my God the poor of all races, of all species, is the special object of my worship. See, Swami Vivekananda wanted that, to he didn't mind suffering for how many lives if need be, so that he can alleviate the sufferings of others. As I mentioned earlier, one of the yokes that the masses had was the dominance of the priests. Buddha abolished that, the difference between the Brahmins and the other castes. He opened the door of salvation to people of all castes. His monastic community did not distinguish between or discriminate people on the basis of caste or social position. His love and compassion was open for all. Even murderers, reformed murderers, were admitted in his monastic community. We have the incident of Angulimala, who was a extremely fearful murderer. Yet, the story goes that he used to kill people and cut their fingers and make a garland and put it on around his neck to show how many people he had murdered. But later, when he encountered Buddha, a sudden complete transformation came over him, and he sought Buddha's refuge. He sought refuge in Buddha, and Buddha admitted him into the monastic community. But later, of course, he had to make some rules debarring some people with some certain diseases, soldiers, murderers. He had to stop them from becoming monks. The priests prescribed many rituals for the peoples to follow, which rituals which could be conducted only by the priests on behalf of the people. So the priests always come between the priest, so the ordinary person and God. Only through them, only through the priest, we can approach God. That was their idea. But Buddha urged each one to seek his or her own salvation through personal effort, self-seeking, spiritual seeking, instead of going through the priest. We can see that in his famous utterance, do not accept what you hear by report. Do not accept tradition. Do not accept a statement because it is found in our books, nor because it is in accord with your belief, nor because it is a saying of your teacher. Be lamb unto yourself. You do your own spiritual seeking. Just swallow whatever the priests tell us or the books tell us. Reason out, use your intelligence, seek, be lamb unto yourself. Buddha's teachings we see are thus in line with the teachings of the Upanishads, which says that the reality cannot be attained or realized through mere study of books, but it is only through personal realization, attainment. You have to attain yourself. When people go on the spiritual path, they want answers for many questions, many fundamental questions that we have. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Is life eternal? What is the meaning of life? Why are we here? What's the purpose of this life? All these questions. And scholars love to engage themselves in hair-splitting arguments over these questions. And Shankaracharya says that these arguments of the scholars are only for their enjoyment. These arguments won't lead you to realization or enlightenment or freedom. They're only there, they get enjoyment, that's all. When Buddha was asked about these questions, is life eternal? Is the body and the soul are two separate entities? All those questions, he kept silence. The Buddhist text says he held noble silence. He didn't say yes or no. Then one of these monks asked this question again and again, and Buddha kept quiet. So at last, this monk got frustrated and gave an ultimatum. If the noble one don't answer my question, I will leave them, the Sangha, the monastic community. Buddha said, I have not spoken about these views because they do not conduce to absence of passion or to tranquility and nirvana. Even whether you know it or not, your craving will still be there, your suffering will be there, and these answers to these questions won't lead to nirvana. And he gave a wonderful example or parable for that to illustrate that idea. Suppose a man was hit by a poisoned arrow. A poisoned arrow, hit by a poisoned arrow, he will die soon. And the people, his friends and relatives, got a doctor, and the doctor was about to pull the arrow out. And the man said, no, don't pull the arrow. First, I have to know who shot the arrow. What caste he? Was he Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, low caste? Or what was the wood that used to make the arrow? What is the what type of wood was used to make the bow? What sort of string? What's the bow string? We made of what material? And what sort of person is he? Is he tall, short, fat, thin, healthy, sick? I want answer for all this. So if you wait for answer for all these questions and then do, by the time the man will be dead. So the aim is pull out the arrow and get yourself cured. Buddha says, you're answering all these questions, all these theological questions are like this, and asking for arrows, asking for the answers to these questions before pulling out the poisoned arrow. That's a famous parable that Buddha gave. That's why he says, I do not speak about these views because they are not conducive to absence of passion and or to tranquility and nirvana. We see similar attitude taken by Sri Ramakrishna. He says, asking these questions and trying to get answer for this is like a person. He gives another example. You have come to the mango orchard. One person take up the notepad and start counting the branches and the twigs and the leaves, number of leaves on the first, how many trees are there and how many branches on each tree, how many twigs on each branches, how many leaves on each twig. Another person pick the delicious mangoes and eats them. What's the purpose? You want to enjoy the mango. What is the use of counting all these twigs and leaves? Sri Ramakrishna says, asking all these answers for these questions are counting the leaves and the twigs. Your aim is to get freedom from suffering, gain freedom of God realization, self-realization. Strive for that. Like the Upanishad sages, Buddha preached the way of self-effort. You strive yourself. You cannot, nobody can help you. You have to work out your own salvation. He did not encourage the idea of praying to your God for help or salvation, not even to Buddha himself. He said, stand on your own feet. He says, those who, relying upon themselves only, shall not look for assistance to anyone beside themselves. It is they who shall reach the topmost height. So, depending upon somebody else, nobody can take you to realization. We, in the Upanishad and the script, the sages there say, you have to do yourself. If you are hungry, is it enough somebody else eats? If you are sick, is it enough somebody else take the medicine? You're trying, depending upon other people to lead you to salvation is like that. You have to work. You have to strive yourself. His final advice to Ananda is also about self-effort. Buddha says that Ananda was his constant companion, attendant, favorite disciple. So he says, therefore, O Ananda, be lamp unto yourselves. Betake yourself to no external refuge. Hold fast as a refuge to the truth. Work out your own salvation with diligence. Nobody can do that for you. You have to work out your own salvation. And he did not care for tradition or sacred texts. He even rejected the Sanskrit language in which all those texts were written at that time. The language of the scholars, language of all the sacred texts in India at that time was Sanskrit. Buddha rejected even that, gave up, because he wanted his ideas to spread to all people. And so he's preached in the local dialect, Pali. And he rejected the prevalent idea of God because he found that it made people weak and superstitious. People, the priests have made the idea of God so dependent on people, and they have to go through the priest to the God. So people lost the idea of self-effort. If you're always somebody supporting you, or if you're always leaning on somebody, you won't have strength on your leg. Suppose you are, if the little child, instead of falling down and trying to stand again and again, if the mother carries the child all the time, the child will never learn to walk, or the feet will never, the legs will never have become strong enough to walk. This idea of depending on God, leaning on God is like that. So he found that made people weak and superstitious. So he rejected the prevalent idea of God. But for Hindus, the devotion to God is fundamental. So this rejection of God was one of the causes that led to the disappearance of Buddhism in India. But what Buddha practiced and taught is Advaita Vedanta of the Upanishads. That Brahman, the ultimate reality, is to be realized, not by studying the scriptures or by rituals, but by the purity of heart and living a righteous life. The Brahmins had forgotten that, and they gave importance to rituals and ceremonials and sacrifices. So Buddha had to come to reveal once more the true spirit of the Sanatana Dharma. It's quite clear from his own words when he said, it's from the Sutta Pitaka, it says, I have seen the ancient way, the old road that was taken by the formerly all awakened. And that is the path I follow. He didn't bring out a new path, but the same old path explained in a different way, in the new way. As in Jesus' words, the old wine in the new bottle, the same thing. Both the Upanishadic sages and Buddha held the view that mind and the body are always changing. And so they are the non-self. But there is the difference is between the sages of the Upanishad and Buddha is the difference in emphasis. Buddha gave emphasis to the constant change, the impermanence of everything that we experience through our senses. Whereas the Upanishadic sages emphasized the unchanging reality, the permanent unchanging reality behind the constant change, behind the limits of our sense experience. It's like the constant, steady, unchanging riverbed. Over that, the water is always moving, constant flow. Now, you can concentrate on the flowing water, which is changing all the time, or the unchanging riverbed. But together make the river. Buddha's stress was on the flowing water the Hindu sages concentrated on the unmoving, steady riverbed. That's the only difference. That is why it's the same teaching. That is why Sir Denison Ross, in his introduction to Light of Asia by Sir Edwin Arnold, wrote, there is nothing absolutely new to the Indians in the teachings of Gautama, and his message could only be intelligible in its original form to the Hindus. The changes he made were in either the cosmogony or the rituals of the Hindus, and could only appeal to those familiar with those. What exactly the original teachings of Buddha are could be understood only by those who knew the teachings of the Upanishads. Then they will understand what he's trying to change or reform. As I mentioned in the beginning, within 2-3 generations, the disciples themselves become priests, and all that the teacher the reformer tried to get rid, all come back. So within a few years after Buddha's passing, the rituals, the sacred books, the traditions, all came back. And Buddha himself became the deity of worship to be prayed to. The reason is ordinary people are not evolved enough to have this highest teaching. The teachings of Buddha are so great that ordinary people cannot have. They need some support, a prop to pray to. So all these things came back into Buddhism. And Buddha's followers gave greater importance to the negative ideas that he spoke of, like the non-self. And this eventually led to the death of Buddhism in the land of its birth. Of course, now in the last 100 years, the things have changed, and again, the number of Buddhists in India is going up. But the Hindus accepted and incorporated all his positive ideas into their spiritual wisdom, and even elevated Buddha to the status of one of the incarnations, like Rama and Krishna. Monasticism was present in India from time immemorial, but it was Buddha who organized them into an order for the first time. In the Vedic ages, the ideal was for the monk was leave alone, walk alone. Even 2 or 3 monastics together was not considered good. Buddha, however, thought differently. After enlightenment, he wanted to spread his ideas far and wide, let everyone know about it, and people be free from suffering. And for that, a group of highly dedicated people were needed who can do it with love and enthusiasm. If a person is involved with life in the world, he could not put his heart and soul to alleviate the suffering of others. So came the need for all renouncing monks. And Buddha instructed his monks to go around bringing about welfare of humanity, not just spiritual welfare. He even insisted on even material welfare also. Just to give 2 examples. Once there was a terrible famine in Vaishali. Vaishali is the capital of the Lachivits. And Vaishali is termed as the heaven on earth. There was a terrible famine. Buddha asked his monks to go and do relief work. So according to based on his instructions, they set up hospitals, cared for the sick, and even took to the cleaning of the city. We are reminded how Swami Vivekananda organized the plague relief in Calcutta in 1898, when his followers, disciples and monks took to the caring of the sick and cleaning the city of Calcutta. And another time, once when Buddha was in Sravasti, he found one of his monks suffering from terrible diarrhea. He was unconscious, but there was nobody to look after him. So Buddha, with the help of Ananda, cared for him and cleaned him up and cared for him. And afterwards, when he asked the other monks why they didn't look after him, they said it was time for meditation, so they left him to his suffering. And they went. He was so sad hearing that. In a very sad tone, sorrowful tone, Buddha said, you don't have your parents to look after you if you fall sick. If you don't serve one another, then who will? And then he added, whoever serves a sick person is indeed serving me. And from then on, we can see the monks and nuns took up the service of the sick and the suffering ones. And more than 2000 years later, Swami Vivekananda recognized the advantages of a monastic community and organized the Ramakrishna order. He wanted to tap the infinite potentialities of the wandering monks in spreading education among the illiterate masses, in doing relief work in times of natural calamities, and to serve the sick and the suffering. So we see him writing very proudly to his Western admirers. I'm quoting from one of his letters. He says, it would have made your heart glad to see how my boys are working in the midst of famine and disease and misery, nursing by the mat bed of the cholera-stricken Paraya and feeding the starving Chandala. Swamiji was so proud of the relief work they were doing. Thus, we see the latest reformer of Hinduism included many of the ideals of the earlier reformer, Buddha. I would like to conclude with one of the many glowing tributes that Swamiji has given to Buddha. Swamiji says, I would like to see moral men like Gautama Buddha, who didn't believe in a personal God or a personal soul, never asked about them, but was a perfect agnostic, and yet worked all his life for the good of all and thought only the good of all. Well has it been said by his biographer in describing his birth that he was born for the good of the many as a blessing to the many. Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya. Our salutations to the Blessed One.
Now, we request Venerable Chökyi to lead in a guided meditation. And thank you very much. We're realizing we're intruding on your other commitments there. So we're extra thankful that you could stay back and lead the guided meditation.
So thank you very much, Mataji, for that beautiful talk. So now I'll lead a meditation based on Shakyamuni Buddha using visualization. So even visualizing, imagining, thinking about the Buddha brings happiness to the mind, gets us in touch with our own Buddha nature, whatever we want to label that as, our own perfect pureness. So first of all, just as you are sitting, bring your awareness into the space of your body and settle on the natural rhythm of your breath, not changing anything, just withdrawing from sensory engagement with the world around, coming to a state of stillness and relaxation and alertness. In the space in front of you, about forehead level, call to mind an image of the Buddha or aspects of the Buddha. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get a sense of this image being in the nature of brilliant light radiating in all directions, positive energy, and that you're sitting in the presence of an actual Buddha. So his holy body is made of pure golden light, transparent, translucent, radiating in all directions. The rays of light radiating out on each beam, millions and millions of other Buddha images radiating out towards every being, streaming out through all the pores of the image of the Buddha. And manifesting in whatever form benefits others. He's wearing the saffron robes of a monk, which don't touch the body because the power of his realizations remains a few inches out. His aspect is very peaceful. Not an atom of his holy body. Every atom of his holy body has the power to give realizations. To really soak in that energy, radiating towards you and towards each and every other being around you. His right hand draped over the knee represents touching the earth, representing having control over all the negative states of mind or the disturbing emotions, completely eliminated by his infinite great love, our own and others. His left hand holding an alms bowl full of 4 nectars, the nectar of immortality, of universal medicine, of purification and transcendental wisdom, and that is overflowing towards us. Buddha's face is very beautiful, loving, smiling, compassionate, the gaze directed towards you and towards each and every other being, everyone there, everyone around us, all beings everywhere, with equal compassion, love, free of judgment. A Buddha doesn't ever judge, never critical, just delights and accepts you exactly as you are right now. Each feature of his holy body represents an enlightened aspect of the omniscient mind. And he looks at you with compassionate eyes and saying, son or daughter, if you want to be free of suffering, I will guide you. Visualizing the light and nectar beams from all the pores of the Buddha in front, soaking into you through your pores, pacifying any disturbing states of mind, any regrets we have that we're things we regret from the past we're still holding on to, completely resolved, purified, cleansed, let go. Any negative karma, all washed out, like washing out the most stubborn stains in a piece of cloth. your body translucent, light, radiating purity. And visualize golden light streaming out from all the pores, light and nectar from Guru Shakyamuni Buddha in front, entering your body, your mind, your speech, filling you with great happiness, tapping into your own innate, pure, positive qualities, or your love, your compassion, your kindness, your generosity, your patience, your joy. And you receive all the infinite wisdom and knowledge of the Buddha, awakening your own potential for omniscience, for knowing things exactly as they are. Awakening your own potential of your body, speech, and mind, your own purity. Wisdom, compassion, kindness, generosity. And this Buddha image in front of you, in the nature of light, comes to the crown of your head, dissolves into an orb of light that soaks through your crown into all the pores of the cells of your body, absorbs totally into you, and you become one with all that the Buddha represents for you. You can hold that at your heart like a precious jewel of all your innate positive qualities to grow, radiating all the colors of the rainbow out in all directions towards others, sending positive energy into the world. And abiding in peace, contentment, your own true nature. And your own mind in the nature of infinite space, infinite potential for transformation, to cultivate every aspect of your own innate Buddha nature. Transforming the environment into a place of beauty, purity. In your mind, stillness, clarity, wisdom. Bliss. And think, this is who I truly am. This is me. And gathering that energy together at that precious jewel at your heart to tap into at times when we get overwhelmed or discouraged. We have these resources, as the Buddha said, within ourselves to be whatever we want. May all beings live in peace. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings live with comfort and ease. May all beings experience every joy, everything their hearts desire. May I be responsible for this by myself alone. Go well. Enjoy the rest of your day. So lovely to see you. Well, not see you all, but know you're there.
Yes, well, we'd love to have you here again with us in person.
Yep.
Thank you very much for agreeing to give the talk and the guided meditation. We really value that. And if you're ever over in Sydney, we'd always love to catch up with you.
Beautiful. Yeah, I hope to be back there soon.
All right. All right then. Thanks very much.
Stay well, everyone.
Okay. Just a few quick announcements that the yoga class, due to COVID, our yoga teacher has COVID. It's in her family as well. So the next 2 weeks, we don't have the yoga class while she and the family recover. And we have the fortnightly discussion coming up, a spiritual evening this Friday, And next Sunday, we will continue the Mundaka Upanishad series, the talks given by Sri Gayatriprana. And then the following Sunday, 2 weeks' time, we have the symposium, which is online only, care for the twilight years. We've got a whole stellar range of speakers from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. You can dip in and dip out, of course. So I think pretty well all of you are getting our emails. So the program's there, so you can have a look at that, and at any time during the day, you're welcome to join in. Have a donation plate there, donation box up the back, and please stay back to get a share of some of the sweets, the offered sweets and savouries.